Good morning and welcome everybody to this second meeting of the Council Controlled Organisation and Economic Development Committee meeting. I'd like to welcome the committee, and I'd also like to welcome everyone else in the room and those on air already. We have quite a busy day this morning. We've got two parts, obviously. We've got that part that will be for everybody public, and then we've got some confidential stuff that will be done in public excluded. So I'd just like to start with the opening karakia. Josh.
Me inoi tātou, e te atua tēnei au, tēnei mātou, au mima kua poti te hapari o Whanganui, arahina I a mātou, ki te wakatau nā wakataonga pai, mo te rohi mo nā tangata katoa. Kia piki ai te ora o te hapari. Me nā iwi katoa o Whanganui. Haumi e, hui e, taiki e.
Tēnā koe, Josh. Second item on the agenda is apologies. I have one late. Kate Joblin will be joining, Councillor Kate will be joining us shortly. Are there any other apologies to record? Thank you. There being none, we'll go on to third item, declaration of interest. Are there any interests anyone would like to note with reference to the discussions today? There being none, thank you. So we'll go on to the next one, is the confirmation of the minutes of the 13th of August. Is there any discussion point before we put the motion? Anyone would like to, points of fact? Could I have a proposer for the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Glenda, and thanks, Councillor Jenny. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Any further discussion on the minutes? Thank you. We'll go then to public reports, and I'd like to welcome Jonathan. And your report on the Economic Development Report dated 1st of July. Welcome, Jonathan.
Good morning, everyone. Great to be here. This paper is an information report, and I will take you through the paper at a pretty high level, and happy to take any questions at the end. First, as always, just a brief comment on economic overview. Obviously, we have now gone through what was an engineered recession, and it's great to see CPI is now dropping, and we're hopeful of better conditions for business and consumers in 2025 and beyond. I've reported to this group over a number of meetings that consumer spend in Whanganui has trended above the rest of the country, and this has continued as of the latest report that we received prior to writing this paper in August of this year. I've also included a graph here to show quite considerable spend from residents of other districts, which is great to see. And also just to note, there has been more data released from the 2023 census, and I think this will be particularly important for councillors to be aware of when looking at further economic development activity, when we look at the demography of Whanganui compared to the rest of the country. Just to note in terms of Whanganui Partners Limited, that we are just concluding final stages of auditing for the 23-24 financial year. This is consistent with the previous 2 years where we have brought the finalised and audited financial statements to the council's meeting in December, so that's something to look out for in the coming months. In terms of the activity of the team at the moment, just to lift out 2 or 3 highlights. So the work programme for 24-25 is on track. we have stepped up our promotion of the UNESCO City Design designation through the release of a tohu or logo, which is aimed at businesses adopting this to elevate the status of our produce and service from Whanganui, particularly from an export perspective. So this is now being rolled out more aggressively to businesses. We've developed a new microsite and a raft of communications to increase adoption. We're currently also on an international education mission. We're about to complete that, but the paper includes a few highlights of this trip that's focused on the Japanese market with a couple of the team, part of a delegation that's gone over to Japan. This has included presenting to the New Zealand Embassy, or at the New Zealand Embassy, in Tokyo, to delegates representing schools, education agencies and government. There was a direct target from this trip of 5 Fs, equivalent full-time students, which are estimated to be worth around about $40,000 each. And we're really seeing some really positive results, a lot of interest, and this is building momentum from activity that we did last year and looking to do in future years as well. We're obviously about to enter the summer period, and just as a reminder, I have brought this to the table in previous meetings, but we were successful in gaining $181,000 from MB for regional events funds. That's really going to boost events over the summer period, give them more marketing clout, and we're looking for that to have a good result in the summer. And finally, I was really pleased to present to MB's recent Regional Growth Summit in Bulls, and this was an opportunity to talk about all the great work that's gone on in Whanganui from an economic development perspective. Just very briefly to highlight that we've been really focused on integration into the council, supporting all the efforts of the council across various areas, whether it be supporting around the Sargent Gallery opening, the tertiary education work that is going on, and just generally looking to add value to all the parts of the council's teams. I have mentioned at this meeting previously, we have had discussions with Ruapehu District Council in regards to a closer relationship from an economic development perspective, and we are currently still in final stages, and I'm working with the council CE on this at the moment. And finally, just to note that we continue to work really actively in the renewable energy space, and I think that's been touched on briefly at other council meetings recently. So happy to take any questions that you have. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions? And I note everybody has speaking rights here. Sorry, Councillor Helen. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Just feel free to call in anybody at any time. Thank you, Jonathan. I know it's a disruptive time for you with all the changes moving into council, whatever. So thank you for the report. I'm sorry if I'm asking a silly question, but there's about 5 pages or 4 pages of your report here, which is very high level.
Yes.
There's nothing else that we should have received?
This is everything. One, I guess, important point mentioned in this is that we are looking to present the full work programme to councillors, and we've requested to arrange a workshop with you so you can have a deeper level of detail on the work streams of the team. We are internally reviewing progress to date, and things are on track, but yes, there's nothing missing from the report.
Okay, so we're expecting a workshop that will delve into lots of detail that we can look into.
Absolutely.
And reporting against KPIs, I'm a little bit fuzzy. I presume we've still got KPIs in place, and is the idea that you would be reporting against those in this report in the future?
Yep, that's something that we have, both the Council C and I have been discussing, but again, something we can give you more information on at this proposed workshop as to how we're now measuring both the, I guess, outputs and ultimately outcomes of the team, as well as the economic indicators that we're considering important. One big part of the work programme is an emphasis on new growth, productivity, and measuring that in an effective way which, as we know, economic development is a long game, it's long term, so some of these things are measured over a period of years as opposed to every quarter. But my understanding is we'll have this workshop, and in 2025 we'll give greater clarity on the progress of each work stream. Yeah.
Thank you. And are you seeing any trends in the current environment over the last 3 months, or anything that concerns you that we should be aware of, either what council's doing or what's happening in the market? Is there any sense of what's going on out there?
Like I say, I think businesses and industry as a whole have had really challenging conditions for the last, well, it depends where you are and who you are, but certainly in the last 2-3 years. High interest rates, high inflation. But with that coming down, we're obviously, as I mentioned in my paper, expecting at least a 50-point basis cut to the OCR this month. And so I know that it's not necessarily that businesses are out of the woods and there's a bit of a lag effect here, but that 2025 and beyond should hopefully see capital freed up and more investment made. I do point to the consumer spend reports. They're useful. I know they're not everything, but it has shown, and this does tally with the anecdotal stuff that we get from business owners, that it's been a tough period, but we've got through it pretty well. And as I've said to certainly at council meetings in the past, the employment level, for example, in Whanganui is still, if we look at a longer term, sort of 10-year time horizon, if you like, particularly strong. So that's helped people get through this sort of cost of living crisis. And it's been a tough year for business, but I think it can certainly be a good story for 2025 is what I'm seeing. Yeah.
Thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll go to CEO.
Through you, Chair, just wanted to add a few comments to what Jonathan said there. Both myself and the Chair have had conversations around the formatting and the content of future reports for the economic development aspect of this committee. Unfortunately, we had that conversation too late to allow Jonathan time to prepare a report that matched that this time round. But as Jonathan has said, there's a workshop coming up in your diaries where we'll go through, Jonathan and the team will present the work program that they've developed, both for this year and looking forward to, say, the next 3-year horizon. And then the future reports that come through are going to be focused more on some of the bigger strategic initiatives that Whanganui and Partners is supporting. We've talked a lot in the past around the positioning of the port for offshore wind development. There is the master planning for our airport, which Whanganui and Partners are now connecting into, to make sure that any development in that space supports tourism in particular, export potential, so that we can make sure all of Council's activities have got an economic development lens across them. And then I think the final point is a strong focus on the connection and the interrelationship between the work that Jonathan's team does recruiting and bringing new business to Whanganui and Council's property portfolio. And we've got some live opportunities at the moment where we can bring in new tenants that will be new business to Whanganui, but will also boost the commercial and financial returns of Council's property portfolio. So it'll be a double win, a win for us financially and a win for our economy and employment opportunities. So Jonathan's future reports are going to be focused more on those matters and a little bit less on the broad economic overview and the context setting in this report.
I think that's a very helpful conversation to set the future direction of this reporting. Councillor Glenda.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for that explanation. So I won't ask a couple of the questions I've got for you, but I am interested in the tohu.
Yes. Yep.
I know that doesn't apply to every business in Whanganui. So what about those businesses that can't use it for their product? Because, you know, there are a few. Is there going to be, I don't know, can you tell me about that?
One of the big parts of developing that was looking back at the application that Council had submitted in the first place for the designation, and one of the big parts is that this is for all of Whanganui. We've led a certain component of it, but the inclusivity is very important. We did, as part of the development of the tohu, we did develop some key values alongside our iwi ambassadors, and those are laid out on the microsites, and when you adopt or download the files for the tohu, those are things that you agree to. But in terms of certain businesses being excluded, like for example, to be clear, one of the points was around businesses that produce alcoholic products, for example. Unfortunately, those are not able to use it. But that was something that we really wanted to work alongside all our key partners, and particularly our iwi ambassadors in this being something that was truly representative of Whanganui. So of course businesses that for whatever reason may not be able to use the tohu can still talk proudly of being based in Whanganui. It's just using the actual logo that we've developed is something that they wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah, they can't. So is that quite clear to that industry, boutique industry, that they aren't able to use it?
Yeah, we've had some. In fact, one of the businesses was on our industry focus group as we developed this to test the proposition, Papaiti Gin. That's something that we're very respectful of the request, and it doesn't prohibit those businesses from being successful and talking proudly about the fact that they're based in Whanganui as well, and we continue to work with them in other ways. Yeah,
absolutely. I just wonder if there could be something else that they could use.
Perhaps, yeah. We should look at how we can work with them. Yeah.
Okay. And another question: the visitors, the students that are looking at coming here from as a result from the visit, are they students that will be coming here to study?
Yeah, there's yes. I mean, that's the ultimate aim, but obviously there's a mixture of opportunities, whether they're here for a whole year, or some look for shorter durations as part of exchange programs, where also Whanganui students would be going over there as well. There's a range from the huge amount of activity that Rachel and Rebecca and the other guys that are part of this trip have done. There's a huge range of opportunities across, but largely focused at the secondary school student markets, and we've also used this as an opportunity to talk to UNESCO Teacher Design in Kobe as well, over in Japan, so that's been a good opportunity. But yes, students, like I say, it's a relatively modest but realistic target that we had, specifically directly attributable to the work that the guys are doing right now, but as we've talked about in the past, the economic value out of this over the long term would be millions of dollars, so certainly worthwhile.
Thank you. I immediately thought that it was tertiary study, not secondary school. So you're working with there's been work in collaboration with the schools here?
Yeah, so representatives over there include Whanganui High School, Cullinane College, and Whanganui Girls College. As we've talked about in the past, we do have a vision for a broader Whanganui as a whole approach, and certainly my team have been, even if there aren't representatives right there, they've been doing that job of presenting Whanganui and all its offerings as a whole, and there could be great opportunities for other representatives in future missions as well. But it doesn't preclude, we're promoting everything that's great about Whanganui, and whether that's secondary, tertiary, etc., and more broadly, working very, very closely with all education providers in Whanganui. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mike.
Thank you, Chair. I was really excited to see the work being done on the neural net of export mapping, but it's not in here. Is it because it's not ready to talk about yet, or could you give a high-level overview of your outcome for mapping what's being exported internationally from Whanganui?
Relatively early stages, but yeah, just for the benefit of everyone, we are developing a survey and working with the businesses to truly understand what our current exports look like, what the barriers are, what the opportunities are, surveying businesses with a view to what we may be able to do to reap a greater benefit from that. So there will be a survey being launched mid-November, with it being out in field for 2 or 3 months probably, and then we will have some findings to be able to bring back to the table and to work out what the next steps will be. But it's relatively early stages, and like we touched on, the session in terms of the deeper dive into the work program can just give you a bit more information as well.
Yeah, very excited. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jonathan, do you want to mention, I know Colleen has got a industry session next week specifically on that.
Yeah,
topic.
there's
Do you wanna-
a launch on the I think the 16th of November to launch that with a select group of industry leaders, and yeah, we can put more information out about that as well. Yeah.
Right. There have been no other questions. I propose. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mayor Andrew.
That's right. Yeah, thank you, Jonathan, and I'm conscious that there's still more to come in regard to some detail down the track, but I think it'd be interesting for people to know. I'm personally familiar with the Regional Business Partner Program itself. I think it might be useful for you to just speak of what that is and what it's about, particularly you talk about the outcomes here. So.
Absolutely. So this is a scheme that Whanganui Partners have been part of for around about the last 5 years or so, run and funded through Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment. For this region, in terms of central government view, is the whole Horizons region, and we have a contractual relationship with CEDA, our fellow EDA based in Palmerston, which covers the whole RBP contract for Horizons region. More locally, so in terms of what we do, we have a role which covers Whanganui, but also Rangitikei and Ruapehu, and it's their role to be more direct than other parts of the team in working closely with businesses, small to medium-sized businesses, and to connect them with the right services that they need, whether it be marketing, HR, finance, general business advice. And so they're targeted to deliver 80 businesses every year, and the whole region is tasked to deliver 320 across a year. And in the last year, we've been delivering the targets. We've been getting really good outcomes. It is also measured on a net promoter score basis, and we've been getting really strong results from the businesses that have been surveyed and gone through that process. So it's a really nice tool locally for us to provide something to business and to connect them with the right advice. The advice doesn't have to be local. It connects them with a range of service providers across the whole country, depending on what their needs are. So it's been a really good for relationships regionally for Whanganui Partners, and also actually a service for businesses that they can locally use, and they are reaping the benefits of that as well. Yeah.
Right. No other questions? Okay. In that case, I'm very happy to propose the recommendation that the Council-Controlled Organisation Committee receive the report, Economic Development Report, dated 1st of July to the 16th of October 2024. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Any comments on this item before we put it to the vote? Jenny.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan, for the report, and I do look forward to something more comprehensive next time. But just a heads up, particularly with the workshop, we're way more interested in outcomes rather than outputs, and a lot of the KPIs historically have been very output-oriented, whereas we're really wanting to see, well, I personally should speak for myself, wanting to see the outcomes for our community more than just the activity that's going on, just to make sure that it's effective. Thanks very much.
Any other comments? Jonathan, I think you're hearing it here, and the CE's already spoken to the point about the next time we report, much more crunchy around economic development stuff that actually supports, particularly the CCOs, around how they can make some more money, drive some more economic development and business across, and along with your KPIs. So thank you for your report, very good, and but you're hearing where we want to go in the future with this. Yes, please.
Yeah, look forward to a more detailed briefing on what would be of most value to the councillors. Obviously, what's been presented in terms of a paper has been the previous style of how we've brought things to the table, and yeah, look forward to being able to present exactly what you're looking for. So thanks.
All right, thank you. If that's the case, if there are no further comments, I'll put the motion on the screen to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jonathan, for your presentation. Right, we move to the next item, which is Michael. Mike, and your report on local government. Mike.
Thank you. This item is just to confirm the voting at the upcoming New Zealand Local Government Funding Agency AGM held later in November. Officers in making the recommendations have followed the advice and the proposals put forward by the Shareholder Council, which is a group of councils who are shareholders of the LGFA to provide advice to other shareholders. There's around 31 shareholders, which includes central government. We have followed that advice, apart from the last one, where the officer recommendation is actually to vote against the changes in the foundation policies. The one we are disagreeing with is the ability for the LGFA board to grant bespoke borrowing limits, which is above the current LGFA borrowing limits of 285% of revenue. The report outlines the reasons why officers are recommending to vote against this. I do note that this resolutions would be passed by means of ordinary resolution, which is a majority of the shareholders who are entitled to vote at the annual meeting. There is the option for all of the resolutions to vote for, against, or abstain from voting. So happy to take questions.
Thank you. Councillor Jenny.
Thank you. Mike, this question may be wildly out of sync, I'm not sure, but I do recall reading something about Three Waters and how those separate water entities are going to be able to borrow in excess of some of these limits. How does that marry up with this particular point that you're making?
It is different to this. The water entities, as proposed, can borrow up to 500% of revenue, but this is the borrowing for councils themselves. And councils themselves have to go through the process of deciding what their preferred option is, concerned community, and all that sort of stuff. So this is just saying, as is right now, they would like to have the ability to grant these bespoke debt covenants.
I think it's worth just making sure we all understand, because at the moment I think it's up to 350%, isn't it? 3.5%, 3.5 times their income.
The current debt covenants that's in place is up to 285% of revenue.
Yeah.
And going back a few years ago, an item went to the Risk and Insurance Committee where they wanted to increase that through the COVID scenario up to 300%, bring it back 5% each year, and from July next year that will go back to 280% of revenue, where it's going to stay long term. This here is to increase the debt covenants for particularly high growth councils or councils that have one-off type emergency situations, so a weather event where they can borrow beyond that debt covenant up to 350% of revenue.
You know, and you make the point clear in your report that these councils could have access to other funding mechanisms apart from an increase in the debt covenant ratio, which affects all councils, and that's the reason why you're making the recommendation against that specific item.
I think there's probably the main reason that we are voting against this is at the moment councils are on watch through Standard & Poor's. We are uncertain whether this type of increase in debt covenants, if it's taken up by a number of councils, what impact that could have on the sector as a whole. I think also we've made the point here, and it's quite pertinent, that Whanganui has established a work program through the long-term plan within a debt covenant of 200%, considerably lower than what we could go up to. We've been able to achieve that. Understand every council is in a different situation However, we've been able to do that. Voting in favour of increasing debt covenants could put more risk on the sector as a whole and on Whanganui going forward.
I think it's really important that you've spoken about that, David.
Through you, Chair, I just want to add to what Mr. Fermor has just said and be probably a little bit more blunt about it. We had to fight hard to retain our AA credit rating to keep, which benefits us from low borrowing costs. We had to fight hard because of the negative outlook for the sector, Mike and I did a lot of work to convince Standard & Poor's not to tar Whanganui with the same brush as the rest of the sector. Allowing additional borrowing to this level potentially raises the risk profile of the sector, and we'll be back here again potentially trying to fight for our AA credit rating, not because of any weakness in our investment profile or our balance sheet, but because of the perception of the sector. So we don't support that for, frankly, selfish reasons. We're looking after our Whanganui ratepayers' interests by protecting our AA credit rating. Simple as that.
Thank you. Mayor Andrew?
Yeah, no, you alluded it to before, Mike, around the rationale for increasing the borrowing power. But is it just those two criteria, around growth and short-term emergency assistance?
Those are the two obvious criteria. They haven't said exactly whether the policies would limit the bespoke borrowings to just those criteria. I suspect it would be wider than that, but we don't have those specific wording.
Okay, so that was my next question. There is no specific wording around the criteria, so it sounds like it's quite subjective to those decision makers at the time.
At present, it is the high growth councils that's been highlighted here that are at the top of their credit limits, have been for some time, and obviously the last couple of years, particularly Hawke's Bay, has experienced severe weather event, which has impacted their balance sheet as well.
Okay, so my other question is around short-term emergency assistance. Would I be right in concluding that if there's an emergency, a region would be slow to build back in regard to paying off the debt because they would have had a catastrophe of some kind, a disaster of some kind, and it suggests short-term emergency assistance. I don't know how they would be able to, that would be short-term when they have no capacity or may have little capacity to pay it back.
I think every situation is different, and it's hard to generalise for what it could look like for a particular council. We've talked a little bit about this through the Risk and Insurance Committee of what a post-event could look like. There's potentially funding from insurance, things like that, potentially central government, and this would not surely be the only source of funding that a council would have available through the LGFA.
Thank you. Member Andrew?
Thank you. Yeah, it's a really interesting discussion. Are you aware of, through your conversations with counterparts at other councils, clearly the high growth councils you would imagine would be supporting this for the reasons that you've outlined. In your conversations with counterparts at other councils, are you aware of other, perhaps smaller councils or councils that aren't so reliant on borrowing, taking a similar view to the one that you're recommending here?
I haven't reached out to other councils. I wanted to focus this on Whanganui itself. So no, I haven't.
Thank you.
Councillor Peter?
Yeah, on a follow-up question to that previous one, should the vote go against us or your recommendation, wildly, and it goes up to 300%, the consequence of that is that maybe the credit rating goes from AA to the next level down, or 2. What is the impact of that? Because it affects the interest rate. So if we're getting it at 5%, at the moment? Does it go down to up to 6%, or and then
Current pricing through the LGFA, if councils borrow from the LGFA, is for every notch of credit rating that is from A, A minus, B plus, B, B minus. Every notch is 5 basis points. So if we went from AA to AA minus, then for new borrowing, risk margin would be an extra 5 basis points on top of that.
thank you.
Councillor Rod?
Thank you. Mine is a different question, really. It's and it's probably to the chief executive or the finance officer. But the recommendation here is that this committee grants delegates the authority to make these decisions. What delegation authority has this committee got? I mean, to my mind, this item is an item that should be voted on by all council. It seems very strange that we're limiting this to 5 members of council.
I can answer that question. The terms of reference enables this committee to vote as the shareholder of council. This item is about a shareholder vote at the annual meeting of a council-controlled organisation. So this committee has the delegation to vote on this.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Risk mitigation, I'm assuming this is going to pass. So if it passes, how do we mitigate our own lending criteria? Do we just ignore them and keep ours at 285? Can we put a policy in place? Like, what would your recommendation, Mike, to mitigate the risks of Standard & Poor's reduction?
I think there's probably 2 parts to that. The first part is the current debt limit that we have self-imposed of 200% of revenue is based at the time and currently what we believe is affordable for the community right now. So there's no reason for us to ourselves suddenly increase our own self-imposed limit. And our long-term plan is the debt projected long-term plan is within our own self-imposed limit. To mitigate our own risk. Now, the risk to the sector as a whole, we cannot necessarily mitigate that. We continue ourselves, for our own selves, to exercise financial prudence in our decision making, to make sure that we have that risk lens, financial risk lens over all our decisions, all those things that we currently have in place. And each year, as Standard & Poor's meets with us, they do comment on the financial management that this council undertakes, and that's a positive rating for us when they rate us overall.
Okay, just to confirm then, there's nothing in place policy-wise that keeps us in line with the percentage of theirs. We are 200%, not 85% of LGFA.
We, as I said, we have a self-imposed limit of 200%. We are able, if we so choose, to go up to 285% or 280% as of July next year. The LGFA allow us to do that if we borrow from them.
Okay, so the only risk to us is, I guess it's going to be subjective because they can borrow more, maybe we should borrow more, is political, so as opposed to your policy.
No, the risk of
it increasing.
If we agreed with the recommendations from the board, the risk is to the sector as a whole, for the credit rating, the sector as a whole. That's the risk if we pass the recommendations that the board has made, that is to allow them to do bespoke borrowing.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hi, Councillor Kate.
Apologies for
No,
lateness.
noted,
I hope
thank
got
you.
that. And I'm sorry if I'm asking a question that's already been asked. I think I heard, Mike, your response to an earlier question was that you haven't talked to anybody else about this, any of your other colleagues? about this?
No, I haven't. I haven't talked to other CFOs.
So we don't know what other councillors are thinking to vote?
No, and in preparing this item, I prepared this item with a Whanganui lens as opposed to what other councils may be doing.
Sure, thank you. And our percentage is what, 0.04% of?
0.04%, but the voting is the majority voting of the shareholders entitled to vote.
So one
council.
shareholder, one vote?
Yes.
Right, thank you. Do we think there'll be any kickback to, or any downside to voting against?
Absolutely not. I have, when I met with the LGFA 3 or 4 weeks ago, they reminded us to ensure we voted. I said it's possible that our council would vote particularly against this one. They didn't have any negative comments from that.
Thank you. So essentially your advice to us is to vote against it with a Whanganui-centric lens rather than a NZ Inc. lens?
Yes.
Right. Thank you.
Right. There have been no further questions. I propose we move the recommendation as it's on the screen. There's 2 parts to this. The first part being that we grant the delegation of Chief Financial Officer to vote on behalf of the Council, local government funding agency's annual meeting on the 19th of November, and the chair of the local government funding agency board as an alternative. And the second part is that we vote in favour of the LGFA's proposals, and they are listed with the exception of item 7, to vote against the changes to the Foundation's policy of the company. So that is specifically voting against this bespoke increase. We can read all that out, but if you want, is that you?
It's normally what we do.
Okay, we'll read it all out. That the proxy or the alternative votes in favour of the local government funding agency's proposals as follows: approve the adoption of the 24 financial statements and auditors' report, to re-elect Craig Stover as the independent director, to re-elect Alan Adcock as the non-independent director, and to elect Eleanor Trout as the independent director, to re-elect the Auckland and Wellington City Councils, nominating local councils to the shareholder council, to approve a 3% increase in directors' fees as outlined in the attached notice of annual meeting, and finally to vote against the changes to the foundation policies of the company. Bit of a mouthful there. Do we have a mover?
Question.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Can we just take that last item out and have vote for A and B, and then vote for that last one
We
separately?
can do that.
Yeah. Because that's the only one of the list that we are against.
Yeah.
That you're that Mike is proposing that we.
So you prefer to take the item 7 out and vote in favour of everything else? Yeah. All right, we'll put the vote in favour of everything else.
Mr Chair, I'm happy to move or second or whatever you'd like, but I just wonder if item 6 there, is that V1? Yes. Should be, 7, to vote against the proposed changes to the foundation policies of the company.
Okay. Make that wording change.
Pardon? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Are we happy with that change to the wording? Proposed changes? Okay, so we'll take the vote in 2 parts. The first is the Part A and Part B down to and including item 6. Can we have a mover? And then we'll vote on item 7. We'll do it in 2 parts. Do we have a mover for the first? Thank you, Member Andrew. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Kate. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. All right, we'll take a vote now against item 7 to vote against the proposed changes to the foundation policy of the company, that being LGFA. Do we have a proposer? Mover. Thank you, Councillor Jenny. Thank you, Councillor Kate. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Okay. We can debate the first and second items as you wish. Mayor Andrew.
Oh, first and second items, okay. I'm going to wait till last.
Okay, that's...
oh, sorry, you mean we can debate
Yep.
number 7 there as well?
Yep, we can debate number 7 as well. Yeah.
We moved it, now we're debating it though.
Yeah, all right.
We've had the vote.
We just moved them, now we can have a discussion on them.
Yeah.
I thought we'd
Yeah.
already had the vote.
No.
No?
We're rescinding the fact that we voted?
No, we
Oh,
haven't.
okay, it's comments. It's comments on it now.
It's comments. So, yeah, so I just
You
want to
can- you
comment
can
on
comment,
it, if that's
yeah.
okay, yeah. So I want to go back to what the Chief Executive said before in regard to our current approach to our borrowing has been very responsible, and we received a very favourable Standard & Poor's credit rating, and I don't think it's in our interests, our best interests, to see an extension of borrowing power for some councils and not all, to put ourselves at risk. Yeah. So I totally understand that, and I just want to further support what our Chief Executive said. And as a shareholder, which we are putting ourselves at risk by doing this, and I think there is plenty of capacity at 285% for councils to be able to make provision for whether it be short-term emergency assistance or high-growth councils, and indeed for high-growth councils, there's already provision there for development contributions, further income, and even increasing revenue through rates because of population growth. So, and there's probably a whole raft of other reasons. So I just I can't support that increase at all. So I support the council officer recommendation.
Thank you. Member Andrew.
Thank you. I'm also very supportive of this, and I'm pleased that it's been laid out so clearly. Making policy changes that allow for increased borrowing and increased headroom, particularly in the current environment, in a way that favours those growth councils who quite rightly do have alternative funding mechanisms available to them as a result of that growth, all potentially adds to greater costs on councils. The borrowing is going to need to be paid back at some point, and of course interest is going to need to be paid on it as well. Interest is OPEX, means it directly affects rates. The idea that a proposal such as this that benefits the high growth councils, that would be disadvantageous to a council such as this who has observed prudent debt levels and debt headrooms, and no doubt made sacrifices to do so. I think we're taking absolutely the right position. The debt levels across the local government sector are acknowledged to be at unsustainable levels, and local government funding mechanisms are acknowledged to be inadequate. So increasing debt headroom in this way really just supports the unsustainability of the local government funding environment. In opposing this today, I think it's important as we attend that LGFA meeting and vote at it, if we thought that there was a chance that this proposal from the Shareholders' Council would carry, that we maybe consider making some comments on how any risk could be mitigated. There was some answers to questions previously about the uncertainty about the application of this proposal and its detail. If we thought there was a chance that this could be supported by a majority of other councils and might pass at the LGFA meeting, we might be interested in asking some questions just to firm up what the application and the detail of this might be, so that we're protected to the greatest extent we can be as a member, even though we're not supportive.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mayor Andrew. Oh, yeah. Right. There being no other comments, I put the motion on the screen to the vote. We'll do it in two parts again. Forgive my excitement in trying to put it to the vote before. So we'll now formally put it, all those in favour of the first motion, which is all items A and B down to and excluding item 7. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. And finally, the second item, item 7, to vote against the proposed changes. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mike, for your report. Right, we will move on to the next item, on the which is the Whanganui District Council Holdings Limited quarterly report. And I welcome Lucy and Caroline on the screen there. Good morning.
Good morning. Kia ora, everyone. And apologies for not being able to join you in person today.
It's these things. I hope you're better, feeling better. We invite you to talk to your report.
Okay, well, I'll perhaps kick us off, and Lucy will feel free to chip in. And I think we've got Jeff in the room as well, have we?
Yes, we have.
So, yeah, so our report, I'll just briefly go through it. I know you will have all had the chance to have a look at it, and you might have some questions you want to ask us, but I guess the key things from our end, noting that for the first time we've got, we also have the our subsidiary chairs in the room. So we've got and chairs and chief executives in the room to speak to their operations. And they've got separate reports as well. But from the holdings, hello, Peter. Nice to see you on the screen. From the holdings end, we've been working through the transition with David and Mike and Paul and Andrew and team, and things are ticking along. So we've had the port shares have transferred over to council. So that happened at the end of September. And then we're working through all of the other issues. I think the properties are looking to be the next on the list. In terms of our support for ICPA, in terms of the assets that Holdings owns, we've purchased 3 additional C-172 aircraft since the previous report, and the quality program has been successfully implemented. So we've got NZICPA has brought some of its diesel aircraft back into service as well, which is great. And on the NZICPA side of things, which you will hear from them directly as well, we've been really encouraged that the pipeline and student numbers that we've had reports on weekly have been tracking according to plan. So things are moving in the right direction there, which is really, really good news. So obviously, we are continuing to monitor that really closely, particularly from a financial perspective, given the risks involved. But it's been really pleasing that things have been moving in the right direction. So cash flow, again, is also being closely monitored. That's been really helped by GasNet providing a larger than forecast dividend. Given their increased earnings, they've been able to support more than anticipated, which has been really appreciated. And also the CCO committee's decision that enabled us to take a more flexible approach with allocating the support envelope for NZICPA, so that that's been able to be applied to working capital needs while NZICPA is not quite into profit-making mode. So it's been helpful. And also with the wind down and the transition, we've been able to take steps to reduce expenditure, including not having a separate office anymore, and including our general manager being now employed by the port and just seconded back on a part-time basis as needed to Holdings. So that's been helpful. On the audit front, and I'm conscious that this is frustrating for everybody, that this has taken longer than anticipated to clear up, and we are really looking forward to the audits being finalised so that we can then publish the financial statements and complete our annual reports for publication as well. We don't think that that's too far off now. We haven't quite had finalisation of the 2023 audit yet, but I think that Jeff might be able to update you. My understanding is that shouldn't be far away, and I know that there have been some tax-related questions that have been asked in the last week, so they're well underway with the 2024 audit as well. In terms of budget and given the ongoing uncertainty and given that holdings has continued on for longer than anticipated, and it's looking like we're going to need to be here for a little bit longer during with the transition working the way it is working, we did at our last meeting approve financial year 2025 budget, so that's in place, and we attached with the papers the September 2024 financial report, and with that we've got a favourable net operating surplus of $339,000 ahead of budget. We provided also in our report a sort of an update against our key objectives from the SOI, so really happy to answer any questions around that. In terms of the issues that we're keeping a closer eye on, obviously just the situation with the NZICPA is and the financial situation are really our key concerns at the moment. In terms of other things, we've had a really strong response to our recruitment campaign for new NZICPA directors, and I think there's a separate paper or a separate discussion on that later in the meeting. Yeah, so I think that's about us for this report, and really happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any questions or clarifications? Councillor Helen.
Thank you, Caroline. You mentioned that there had been the audit had been delayed a little bit because finalising the accounts for NZCP or whatever was delayed. Is there a problem there, or what was the problem with that delay?
I think the problem's been resolved now, and it just needs to work. I think that's been sorted out now, is my understanding.
We can ask Jeff. You've got any update on that, Jeff?
I'm not aware of the details, but I understand it's just a matter of time, just working through. There was initially they were wanting to confirm that the NZICPA numbers that fed through to our report were the same, because as you can imagine, if the Pilot Academy report changed, then it just needed to be cross-checked against ours.
Okay, so it was cross-checking.
And
yep.
I think also they work within a window, and once that window's closed, they're moving on to other councils and other organisations in terms of audit. So to slot these ad hoc completions, and we're very close. I know we've probably said that a few times in the last few years, but the irony is, I think, is that we will catch up. And if Holdings is still here this time next year, then I put some money on the fact that we'll probably get it through in time.
Oh, good. I was just checking it wasn't some sort of systematic issue, or where
not
that was.
Not aware of any material
no.
issues.
Great.
It's just process.
Lovely.
Perhaps if I add a little nuance to that, there was some complexity in the treatment of the accounting standards to some of the loans to NZICPA, and how an auditor has to get assurance that those are at arm's length basis. And in the end, there has been some changes made to both Holdings and NZICPA's accounts, such that loans from the last financial year, will be treated as effectively loans from a legal purpose, but as an equity injection from an accounting standards perspective, and there's no sort of clarifying that in the account. So there's some steps that have been taken to make the auditing process easier, to avoid a chunk of auditing work, and that will hopefully enable a faster process from here.
Excellent, thank you for that. The Hato Hohepa, I presume, is not operating at full capacity yet, but has the ability to do so. You're just waiting for numbers to climb, is that correct?
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, so there is a group of students in there now, but yeah, and that will increase as the pipeline grows, and we've got more students coming in over the coming months. So
thank you. And how big was the contract for the collegiate motor and retaining wall remediation? Was that big or small? There's no indication of how much that is.
It's a big job. I don't know whether any of you have actually seen that retaining wall, but it's a really really high wall, and it's in really bad condition. So it's a significant job, which we have. Jeff, we've accepted the tender now for that work, haven't we?
Yes, we have. I'm just not too sure if we've advised other tenderers of the price.
Yeah, so just because of the commercial situation, I don't know that I feel comfortable giving the number.
What we could say is, pleasingly from a director's perspective, given it was a big job, we put a placeholder in the budget based on Jeff's and Properties team's sort of consideration of what that might be, and the tenders have come in so that we're okay from a budgetary perspective.
Okay, thank you, that's right. And I may have mislooked at some of the figures, but the revenue from the collegiate motor in part, the profit against expenses didn't seem particularly high. There wasn't a big difference. So I guess I was expecting bigger profit coming from our accommodation sector, because that was one of the big benefits of providing accommodation, apart from some other things.
Yeah, I think that, that's big at the moment. With NZICPA's difficult situation, we're limited in what we can ask for, and they have a fixed amount that the cadets pay for accommodation. It's a bit of a process, so that they are looking at potentially increasing their charges, and therefore what they can pay for the accommodation. But that's a bit of a process that has to go through, and that will probably it takes quite some time to go through that process. So yes, appreciate that it's not a it's not a hugely profitable operation at the moment, but it should be able to be more profitable in future, but it will take some time to get there.
Okay.
Those figures you're looking at is also the profit fees between holdings and NZICPA. I think for a complete picture of the accommodation profit as such from students, would need to prepare a bit of analysis for you that also looked at what NZICPA is charging students, which we could maybe dig into deeper in a subsequent meeting if that's of interest.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's the different components of that business. I think it would be quite good to have clarity, because it was one of the selling points of providing accommodation, was the income ability from that sector. That part, the accommodation part, was deemed to be quite good. So it'd be good to see if that's still the case, and why not. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We will go to Councillor Rob.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Carolyn. There's a bit of confusion for me about just what is in public here and which isn't in public. And I know we haven't passed the resolution to go into confidence yet. But the financial statements for holdings and everything, is this in the public domain? It includes information on the aviation assets and various things.
The high-level information is in the public report.
Okay. So I think that there's a lot of public interest in the flight school, and a lot of misinformation, unfortunately. And the reality of the situation needs to be explained in a session like this that is open to that the public can get information about. Yeah. And it really disappoints me to see there's only 5 lines in here on the flight school.
I think once the audits are completed, there will be more information that will be able to be made public, but we just need to make sure that that's all been.
With respect, that's not what I'm talking about. That's one side of it. But there's a lot of good news around about the flight school.
Yep.
And I would have expected to see that in the public section of this report. There's very, very good news.
Mr. Chair, could someone please ask or answer the question, why is the draft financial statements for the year ended June in the public excluded part of the meeting? I think that's
It's
what
not
Rob's
in the
trying to
public
get.
excluded. It's in the public section. And
No, well, maybe I've got this all wrong, but it's the management accounts that are in the public section for this year, and last year's in the public excluded.
no,
So you have in here
balance sheet.
balance sheet as of the 30th of September.
Yeah.
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 But that's all you have.
That's the
Yeah.
management
Okay.
accounts.
That's the management accounts.
Okay, so but
So
what I'm
the
asking
question,
is,
sorry, Rob, just before, I just think we need to be clear on this.
Yeah.
So what is the reason that the financial statements that Rob is referring to is in the public excluded part of our meeting?
no, it's not in the public excluded. It's in the public.
This is in the public,
Yeah, that's
and
correct.
then the detail is in public excluded, where we want to discuss things that are of confidential nature. So
commercially
is
confidential.
your question around why is around
Well,
this?
I
information?
wanted to clarify whether this was supposed to be in the public or the public excluded, and it's been explained it's in the public. Well, I accept that. But the question that I'm really wanting an answer for from Holdings is, why haven't we got a more extensive report on the flight school in the public section? You know, I mean, there's only 5 lines. No wonder the public gets misinformation.
I'm sorry, but you've got the accounts in here. You have a summary of each of the companies. So this is what's been deemed as not confidential. So we've disclosed what we can and what should be disclosed in these meetings.
It's not a question. I'm not questioning the disclosure. What I'm saying is that the report that appears in the public section on the flight school should be more extensive and reflect the reality of the situation so that we do something about this misinformation. It's not good enough to have just 5 lines on the flight school, and it's, you know, there's some positive things in there. Encouragingly, student numbers have been broadly in line with the July 2024 forecast. I know that we'll get more information about this, and we have had, as councillors, more information. But the public deserve more than what is in this report.
All right, point noted.
Yeah, what we can say is that we've so that there's a bit of commercial sensitivity around a lot of what's happening with the pilot academy now, and it's quite difficult to separate that out, which is why the pilot academy's report, their own report, is in public excluded at the moment. But what we can say is that we will work with them to make sure that at the next meeting there is also a public report which has as much information in it as it can.
So, Councillor, I just will reiterate what you said. There is a lot of good information coming out, a lot of good news starting to appear. It's early days for the Academy. I think the next meeting will be more information being disclosed in the public that at the moment it's probably not appropriate to do so. But you're right, there is good news and something we need to talk about. So if I can go now to Councillor Ross.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for your report. Mine would probably sound rather minor compared to previous questions, but in reading pages 44 and 45 about the additional accommodation which Councillor Helen referred to at Hatohau Pepa. The NZICPA seems very close to getting to profitability, and we are using the second site. So my question is, on page 45, both accommodation properties are now being used, although not fully yet, we know this, and other opportunities have not been taken up to date. Is it appropriate to ask in this session what those other opportunities could be but have not been taken up? Because the number of students at that second accommodation is small. The maximum amount that we can have in both venues is not likely to be reached for quite some time yet based on the weekly reports that we are getting. So could you elaborate, or are you able to elaborate on other opportunities have not been taken up to date?
What I can say is that we've explored some opportunities for other organisations to use on a temporary basis parts of the accommodation assets when they have been underutilised, and those we've explored opportunities. There's been, I know, there's a couple that we said we could potentially accommodate, and they've come back to us and not taken up that opportunity. And then one of the difficulties, though, Councillor, is in relation to NZICPA's pastoral obligations. In order to meet its obligations to NZQA, it's not like we can just accommodate anybody else at the same property. They'd have to. There needs to be quite strict rules in place to meet the obligations to NZQA. Otherwise, we would risk them losing their ability to provide the programs that they do. So we've got to be careful about that as well. So we haven't been able to come up with an arrangement with any other organisation, although we've talked to 3 or 4 for medium term, but also for very short term programs where they potentially could use the accommodation. We haven't been able to come up with anything that would work and meet those obligations to NZQA. And the couple that we thought might possibly work have not taken up the opportunity. So that's where we're at with those. And now we're in a situation where we need to make sure that the accommodation is available for NZICPA as the numbers increase. So that obviously gets more difficult, and it's less attractive if we can only offer it for a very short time. Hope that makes sense.
This is a plus I'm about to put in there, because you mentioned the word of pastoral care obligations to those students that are in that accommodation. So I'm stating the obvious, or asking for the obvious, that it can't be treated like a backpackers or a youth hostel. People just can't come in and out to fill up the spaces because of those obligations to those students. That has to be first and foremost, as opposed to temporary accommodation for whoever wants it.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you, Ross. Councillor Kate.
Nice. Thank you. That was good questions, Ross. And thank you for your report. Really comprehensive. Appreciate it. Am I able to ask questions about GasNet?
Yes.
Yeah, as part of it. And that's Peter Hazeldine up there, is it?
Yes, it is.
So GasNet
morning,
has
Peter.
got a separate report as well. Do you want to, Mr. Chair, do you want to take questions about GasNet now, or do you want to take them?
Only in relation to the Holdings Board report. Then we'll have a separate under public excluded if it's confidential.
Oh no, it's in relation to these, this item here.
No, that's
I'm very clear on what's in and out of public. Thank you. So, Peter, I was particularly interested in the. Sorry, I'm scrolling free. What you called it? The GasNet cubed based health and safety report. It's quite the most detailed, I think, or not detailed, but the information, particularly around injury analysis, etc., I thought was fascinating. Could you talk me through when you're looking, like particularly the injury analysis, as a director, what sort of things are you looking for in terms of what that information alerts you to?
Well, first of all, I'd like to comment, just compliment the GasNet on the running a fairly safe organisation. What we use this information for is looking at any trend. Are we having accidents in the particular areas which are like slips and small stuff? We clearly have a big focus on anything major. We'll see we've had no LTIs for some time. Medical treatments are fairly limited as well, but we're just looking for trends. Because often, if you're aware of the old safety pyramid thing, if you're building up your base, you're heading for the big one up the top, and we're trying to. There's always a strong focus on what the base of the pyramid is, the small stuff, the little trips and falls and cuts and nicks. Or near misses. So it's just keeping a track of all incidents. We encourage all incidents to be reported, even if you think, oh, that was close, got away with that. That's something to report, not to say, oh, I got away with it, so I don't have to report it. And we think we're generally getting a pretty good culture in that regard. It's a no blame culture. So we're just looking to get all the information, all the incidents reported, so we can see if there's any trend in any particular area. Michael Ram, I'm not sure if he's arrived yet. He may want to elaborate on that, but that would be my view.
Thank you. I would be really interested in any elaboration you could offer.
You there, Mike?
Yep, I'm here, Peter. What we do is, basically with GasNet, our prime focus is around both employee safety and also public safety, because we have an obligation to the public dealing with gas. Oh, sorry. So what happens is actually every day the engineering team has a briefing in the morning around health and safety on a daily basis, and the admin team on a weekly basis. That's the focus we have on health and safety. We're ramping up the reporting of near misses. We're reminding people, even if it's minor, we want to know about it. So that's happening as well. But I've only been with the organisation since February, and I'm very impressed with their health and safety. I haven't been involved in public safety before, but their systems are very well monitored, and reporting is very high.
Thank you. And probably you've already answered my question. Peter talked about a no-blamed culture, and just, I mean, and probably you've already answered it, but tell me again, how do you know that it's a no-blame culture? Perhaps that's a question more for you, Peter, as a director.
How do I know it's a no-blame culture? Well, that's what we encourage. We encourage people to report, and the reaction is if someone does something silly and they just completely ignore a regulation or just being careless, we encourage them to report it, and you don't come down on them like a ton of bricks. We try to encourage it. Think about it better next time. Don't do that sort of thing. It might not be, you might do something silly and it's someone else who gets hurt. Like you leave a silly example, a simple example. You put a hammer on something which isn't really secure. You put it down because you're not using it. Someone else walks under it and it falls on them and they get hit. So the focus has to be that it's not just yourself, it's your work colleagues, it's the public who may be the victim of any silly behaviour or careless behaviour. So, I mean, if someone was continually doing something stupid, yes, there might be have to be some action taken, but the initial position on anything is it's not a blame. You made a mistake, let's not do it again. Work on the solution, work on the outcome, not work on necessarily focus on the actual decision.
Fantastic, thank you. Really appreciate those answers.
I have a question, Mike. The unaccounted for gas and your number of gas escapes, which both seem relatively low and certainly not increasing in any way. How does that compare to industry average?
We're
Pretty good.
I don't know, Jeff might be able to help me on this one, but I believe we're relatively in par with other areas.
Yeah.
Our detection of gas escapes is a little bit different. We're probably a little bit more thorough because we do walking surveys. A lot of the other networks do driving surveys. We've trialled a combination of both. Actually, we feel that the walking surveys actually pick up a few more escapes, so we're doing a combination at the moment.
Thank you for that.
Mike, just want to comment. I think you were talking about there's actually a satellite type of system that can detect gas leaks. Is that correct?
Yes, that is being looked at. I'm not sure where that's at the moment. There is a system overseas that's being looked at. And there's another system. We're doing a little bit of research at the moment, what potentially we could move to make it a little bit more efficient, but still have the accuracy that we've got within Whanganui.
Thank you. That's helpful. Councillor Rob.
Thank you, Peter, and welcome, Michael. Good to see you. As far as the directors are concerned, Peter, are the directors pursuing a strategy of growth, or is it just maintaining the status quo? What is the philosophy there of the directors for this gas net? Because I think it's an important public question.
Next session, please, Rob.
Pardon?
Can we deal with that in the next session, please?
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting one, Mr. Chairman, because the public are interested in what the directors foresee for the company. Yeah. It doesn't need to be into specifics, but if this company is now in a state of maintaining the status quo, I think that's public information. If it's in a state of growth, that's another thing, And this is what I'm getting at with talking about this public information. The public need to be taken into understanding a lot of these things better than they are now.
Yeah, okay. I take your point, but you're already seeing a lot more information in this meeting than possibly you've seen before, and we are on a journey. Let's take the advice from Peter, Chair, and talk in, because there are specific items that he has raised in his report and the public excluded. There's obviously some deal of confidentiality about it. But I take your point, and we all do. The more that we develop this reporting and we change the format and the quality of the information that we're getting, which is these reports that we're getting now are really, really good. And I appreciate your interest from the public, but let's just, for this meeting, get through and have these confidential conversations, and then we can bring forward to the next meeting a lot more stuff that we might be able to share publicly. Yes, Jeff.
Maybe I could just go back to a question Councillor Vincent asked about the Pilot Academy reporting. This was the first round of the new structure, and Pilot Academy actually produced a comprehensive report, but it was public excluded and interspersed with public information, and there just wasn't sufficient time to be able to split that report out. So the intention going forward will be that there will be a Pilot Academy public report, and there would have been this time had there been the time to strip out. The report you've got in public excluded, you'll see, is quite a lot of information, and to strip out the two, just time didn't allow.
All right, any other comments or questions of fact? Clarification, Michael? Councillor, yeah. We haven't put the motion together yet. Okay, if that's the case, I propose we move the recommendation that the Council-controlled Organisation Economic Development Committee receive the report, Whanganui District Council Holdings Limited Quarterly Report, dated November 2024. Can I have a mover, please? Mayor Andrew, can I have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Helen. Now, is there any comments on this item? Councillor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, first of all, just to tautoko some things that the councillors have mentioned. Councillor Roche, I am also frustrated, I guess, that during winter we didn't fully utilise our accommodation services. We did hit it a little bit late. I'd like to make sure that next year any accommodation that we could utilise should be looked at, whether or not it's in council or in our CCOs. I'd like to thank you for this report, because I've been here 2 years now and I finally understand what GasNet does. I understand what's going on. I love that it's a well-functioning, valuable company. This report is really good, and I thank you for that. I do agree with Councillor Rob, though. I would like to see more of the vision and things that you see in public information around where we're going in the future. I don't think that's private information. I do know that the financials on the public excluded information is interesting, so I look forward to talking about that later on. And the flight school, every week at the moment, I do actually agree with Councillor Rob. There's a lot of positive things going on with flight school. For those who don't know, I actually meet and talk to the students on a daily basis because they're in my building opposite me now, so I can literally count them. So every week it's going past, I'm feeling less and less worried, and I'm looking forward to the changes. So thank you for this report. This has been, I think, actually the best holdings report I've seen in 2 years. So thank you for that.
Mayor Andrew.
Yeah, thank you. There's quite a bit to comment, but I just want to lift the conversation up a little bit here and acknowledge that holdings and its subsidiaries of going through a transition have been for some time. It's not an overnight job. It's not easy just to flick the switch and see that happen overnight. So I want to acknowledge the Carolyn and Lucy in particular for your hard work and diligence, and also in particular the governors of the subsidiaries as well. You know, behind the scenes, we've got a lot of people worked really hard to during the transition and during these really difficult times. So I want to say thank you to them. But also, I want to acknowledge that to your point, Chair, that we are on a journey. But the previous report for this committee was 32 pages. This report is 150 pages. So I know it's, you know, that's a numbers thing, but there is a lot more content in here. There is we're able to make a much better and much more informed decisions. We're able to also have far more confidence than we've had in the past in regard to our high risk areas, which are our CCOs, also high opportunity areas as well. And that goes to my next point. If we look at the holdings report here, what we're seeing is a good news story, and the public need, our ratepayers, our community need to understand that. You're seeing the word encouragingly, better than forecast. So we're seeing reduction in costs, and we're seeing increase in cash flow. We're seeing greater transparency and improved relationships. We're seeing the accommodation at Hato Hohepa is now being utilised, and we're also seeing just an overall uplift and increasing curve in regard to all the things that we need to see. So I want to just acknowledge kind of where we're at, where we're coming from, and where we're going to. And yes, we're still in that transition, but the story to me reads well, and I think we should acknowledge that as well. Thank you.
Any other comments? I also too just want to thank Caroline and Lucy for your report, but also more importantly, and I want to do this in the public section, GasNet Peter and Mike and Mark and Jeff for reports, and also Matt and Gerard for the NZICPA. I really like to thank you on behalf of this committee for the information that you've provided. It's been such a step change, and I've said it to you privately, but I'll say it publicly. What this committee is about is really here, increasingly as we go forward, to you as chairs and CEs is around what can this committee do to help your businesses grow faster, better, stronger, and where you might want to take your businesses, particularly around, you know, we've already had a question about GasNet, but it applies equally. So the reporting that you're giving us is now providing us to set the stage for us to have a much more informed strategic debate. And I think, referencing Councillor Robb's comments, there'll be much more coming in subsequent meetings that we will be able to talk publicly. Bearing in mind there'll always be confidential stuff, but I'd like to thank you personally for all what you've done so far to step change the way that this committee functions. I'd now like to, if there's no further comments, I'm just checking, no further comments, I'd like to put the motion on the screen. All that's as read out. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. Thanks. We'll move to the next item.
Motion to exclude.
Yeah. Any comments? No comments? All right. All those in favour? And yep. Those against? Carried. Thank you.
There's a second motion.
Now we've got to pass the second motion for the following people to remain. I better read this out.
Yes.
That Jeff Evans, General Manager of Port Operating Company and General Manager of Whanganui District Council Holdings Limited.
Do you want to read it from here?
Oh, that's easier. Seconded Lucy Elwood, Director, WDCH, Caroline Van Leuven, Chair, WDCH, Mark Peterson, Chair, Whanganui Port Limited Partnership, Matthew Doyle, Chair, NZICPA, Gerard Gamble, CE, NZICPA, Peter Hazeltine, Chair, GasNet, Michael Ram, CEO, GasNet, and Adam Howard Brumby, Independent Financial Advisor. I noted you on the screen there, Adam. Be permitted to remain in this meeting after the public has been excluded because of their knowledge of 8.1, 8.2 and 8.3. This knowledge, which will be of assistance in relation to the matters to be discussed, is relevant to those matters because of their positions within the Whanganui District Council Holdings Limited and the Whanganui Port Limited Partnership. May I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Kate. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Jenny. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Any comments on that? No?
Carried.
All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you.
And a minute to go off the air, please.
And a minute for it to go off the air.